Today we're gonna make some mac and cheese. So have my pasta, rest of the ingredients over here, some cheese. Use whatever kind you want. This is some gouda mixed with some cheddar. And have our milk and our half and half. Some whole milk. And of course have our seasonings over here, our salt, our pepper, smoked paprika. And of course butter, some olive oil to coat the noodles. So our first step would be, of course, to boil these noodles. Boil them around like 9 minutes, so 9-8 minutes around that time. So it'll be cooked a little bit, but not cooked too much, because we're gonna put it in the oven after. It's gonna be baked mac and cheese. So over here, we're gonna get our water. We're gonna turn up the high to boil it. And can't forget, we gotta season that water, so put some salt up in here. And while we wait for that to come up to a boil. While we're waiting on our water to boil so we can put our noodles in, we're gonna melt some butter in a pot. So just get a whole stick of butter, throw it into our pot over here. And we're gonna melt it over a medium heat. And we need to have our whisk or a fork or so we can melt it down, then whisk in our flour and half and milk. Gonna do our little chill break and have it melt down all this butter. Shouldn't take too long to melt the butter down. So we got a whole stick of butter in there. And then we're gonna have a half a cup of flour that we're gonna put in and whisk that together for about like a minute. You just use any type of flour, just like a all-purpose flour would work. And over here, our butter has all melted. So turn this down a little bit. And then we're gonna go and put our flour in here and whisk it around. We're gonna create like a bechamel. And we're gonna whisk this together. It should look like a wet sand. Be like a minute. We'll be doing this around, so whisk it together for about a minute. And start to put our half and half in there. So you see over here, it's starting to thicken up with all the flour and kind of like all wet and kind of sticky. Have our 1.5 cup of milk. Pour this in little by little. Preferably want to use like a metal whisk, but if you're using a non-stick pot, you can't use a metal whisk, it will scratch it all up. Pour the rest of our milk in here, then get our half and half. Get our half and half, so around 2.5 cups of this. We'll start pour all that in here. And we also see that our water is boiling over there. So our noodles, we'll have to pour those in. Set our timer for around 8 minutes. Hey Google, set timer for 8 minutes. And keep pouring our half and half in here with our flour, and it's going to get really thick. And make sure you stir with the purpose using the plastic whisk, because the plastic one is not as firm. And just pour in the rest of our half and half. We're going to keep stirring this. Our milk is incorporated, and then we're going to put some of our cheese in here. And we'll keep stirring this over medium heat. And we want this to look like a like a condensed type of soup. That's how thick it should be, so it should be pretty thick, but not too thick. It still should have a little bit of liquidness to it, but kind of like a soupy, like a thickened condensed soup, but pretty smooth. So in here you see it's like a little thickened soup. Then we're gonna remove this from the heat and stir in some of our cheese. So we got our bechamel. Then we got our cheese. So we have around like 4 cups of cheese in here. And we're gonna use just like part of it. We're not gonna use all of it, maybe around like half of this. We're gonna let half of this and mix it into our bechamel. Kind of like just like our roux. And we're gonna want to let it melt down in here. You can use already pre-shredded cheese, but by using that, it makes it harder to melt. So you have to put a little more work into that if you use cheese that's like that. It's always best to use cheese that it comes in the block and you grate it yourself. It comes out a lot more fresher. And we're just get some cheese little by little. Sprinkle that in here. And we want to make sure we don't use all the cheese because we're gonna put some on top of our mac and cheese. And keep mixing this up. We got our smoked paprika. We're gonna sprinkle some of this in. Around like a half a teaspoon or so. And then our pepper, we're gonna sprinkle that in too. And our salt, we're also gonna use a half a teaspoon of salt. We're gonna go and sprinkle that salt in here too, into our bechamel. And we're gonna mix all this together and combine it. And everything should melt pretty smoothly in here. You can also use white pepper and white cheeses. You wanna just keep the whole sauce white, but also mix it any type of your favorite cheese. So this is some gouda and cheddar cheese. So some white and yellow mixed together. Next, we get all that mixed in and incorporated, well incorporated, and let it melt inside of our sauce. So we need to move pretty quickly with this so it doesn't cool down. So it should be all mixed and incorporated inside your sauce. And your sauce, it should be slightly even thicker now. It's a pretty simple, straightforward thing. We're going to combine this bechamel with our noodles when our noodles come out. But first, we're going to drain the noodles. So you need your colander out so you can drain your noodles. So you need your strainer. Pour your noodles in here, strain all the liquid out. Let's go check on that. Hey Google, how much time do we have left?
Sorry, I don't know how to help with that. Here are other things you can try.
So our noodles are ready, and we're gonna take these off the stove. And we're gonna sprinkle a little olive oil on our noodles to make sure they don't stick together. So they don't stick together. Sprinkle a little bit of that up there. get our noodles, and we'll just pour it back into this pot right here so we can combine it with our bechamel sauce. So our sauce looks about like this, so it's still thick, and we're gonna pour it all across these noodles. And we're gonna mix it all in. And the sauce looks pretty creamy and right now. So it looks about like this. So get all that mixed in here. And our oven is set on 350. Mix all that together. Get a little more cheese and we sprinkle that in. A little more cheese, sprinkle that in. And we'll keep stirring that like that. Combine. And keep mixing that. Now we're gonna get our mac and cheese, and we're gonna transfer it to another container that we can put into the oven. So we're just gonna transfer that over. You see it looks like this right now. Now we're gonna get the rest of our cheese and sprinkle it across the top. So we should have it covered with our cheese. And so you'll see some cheddar cheese and some of that gouda. That's some of the white cheese that's mixed across top. We're gonna get this and put this into the oven for around like 25 minutes. Put it in there for like 25 minutes, just till all melted, all the cheese and everything. And then this step is optional. You can turn it up to broil after the 25 minutes and let it brown a little bit on the top. Get a little crispy. Hey Google, set the timer for 25 minutes.
25 minutes, and that's starting now.
Let's check on that mac and cheese. Let's see how it looks. Okay, looking pretty good. Let's go and broil it for a couple minutes, give a little browning. Let's go and broil it. Just for like 2 minutes or so. You don't want to do it for too much because end up burning the whole thing up. Okay, now I got the mac and cheese out. If you don't want the little brown crispiness to it, you can just not broil it for like, just take it out at the end of the 25 minutes. Don't broil it for like 2 minutes or so.